Hi again, Marvin Kilborn here, retired public school teacher. The last couple videos I did called Louisiana Sucks 2, Keithville Middle School, I basically talked about the 3 years I spent looking for a social studies job in Louisiana with no luck. Found one temporary emergency hire type job at Keithville Middle School. My intent was always to move back home to Texas anyway. I grew up in Texas, joined the military, did my 22 years, retired actually in Louisiana, but my intent was always to move home to Texas. So in March of 2006, my wife and I moved to Tyler, Texas. And while I was still in Louisiana, I got my Texas teacher certification, which this is actually one of the problems with public education. You would think that if you get certified to teach, maybe there should be like a national certification. Makes sense to me that if you get certified to teach in one state, then all the other states should basically honor that. I mean, it's not like we're teaching subjects, world history, whatever, algebra, English. It's not like we're teaching these subjects differently in different states. So anyway, it's frustrating. So Louisiana doesn't accept Texas teacher certifications, and Texas doesn't accept Louisiana teacher certifications. There are some states that practice what's called reciprocity, where if you get certified in one state, other states will accept it. But Texas and Louisiana aren't those. So basically I had to buy my own, sign up, take the tests, and get certified in Texas. So I already had my Texas teacher certification when we moved to Texas, and I'd actually already started applying for jobs. In Texas, we have what's called independent school districts, ISDs, and there's over 1,200 of these. Pretty much any town of any substance at all has its own independent school district. In Tyler, believe it or not, there are 65 school districts within a 1-hour drive or a 1-hour radius of my home. 65 independent school districts. These 65 districts represent 115 middle schools and high schools, all within a 1-hour drive of my home. And I applied with every single one of these 65 school districts. Only got a couple calls to interview for social studies jobs. One of the problems with social studies is it's historically been reserved pretty much for coaches. So it's very difficult to find a social studies job at the high school or middle school level if you're not a coach. Well, I'm not a coach and had no interest in coaching. Excuse me. So therefore, had a very difficult time. But I continued to apply. I even applied with the Dallas Independent School District. Dallas is about a 2.5 hour drive from Tyler. But I applied with Dallas. I was willing to do the commute if I could find a job. Well, about halfway through the summer of 2006, actually about 3-4 weeks before school started, the principal at a school called Pinkston High School in West Dallas called me in for an interview. So I drove out to Dallas, interviewed with this man. I don't remember his name now. Actually, I was only with Pinkston a short while, and I'll explain why here shortly. But I went out there and interviewed with the man. We spoke for 1-2 hours. I was there for quite a while. He told me he'd be making his decision pretty soon, so I said goodbye. I started driving home. I got about halfway home to Tyler and my phone rang, and it was actually this principal calling me to offer me the job. Well, that's fast enough. Well, I was certainly excited. I mean, I spent those 3 years in Louisiana trying to find a job. Now I have finally found one. And really just after moving to Texas. Again, we moved to Texas in March, and here it is, the middle of summer, whatever that is, June, July. I was offered a job, so I'm excited to have it. The principal did tell me to be patient. It sometimes takes a while for the district to call teachers in to sign their contracts and go through training and whatever else we need to do. So I was patient. Never got a call from the district. About once a week, a couple times a week, I would call the principal and tell him, look, I haven't heard from the district yet. He said, well, just be patient. The wheels turn kind of slow over here. And so I continue to be patient. Well, teachers go back to work the week before the kids show up. So you've basically got that 5 days to set up your room, get prepared to meet the kids, maybe prepare lessons, all the things. There's also a whole lot of training that teachers have to do. So all the things that you have to do prior to just actually greeting your students on that first day of school, you have that whole week to do. Well, come that week before school, I still had not been called in or told to come to work. Didn't have a contract yet. I called the principal that Monday. He said, hey, what do you want me to do? He said, just hang in there, be patient. Anyway, so I was patient all week, but I'm also getting frustrated. I'm wanting to get into my classroom and see what I got to deal with. This is my very first permanent real job, teaching job. So I'm excited, but I'm also really getting frustrated. Anyway, he called me Wednesday and said, you still haven't heard from the district? I said, no, sir. And he goes, well, look, come in tomorrow. So I go in Thursday morning. Keep in mind, I'm going to have 2 days to get ready, get my room ready and everything to greet the kids come that following Monday. I went in Thursday morning. For some strange reason, there was nobody there to show me where my room was, give me the key to my room, let me know where I'd be teaching. So I'm like, man, I don't believe this. I mean, I'm already getting a bad attitude because this is just not the way to greet a new employee in any line of work. I wasn't able until the afternoon, early, right after lunch, somebody brought me my key. Are you Mr. Kilborn? Yeah, okay, well, let me take you up to your room. So I go to my room, I open the door, and I could not believe what I saw. I mean, this wasn't a classroom. I mean, it was big. It was big enough to be a classroom, and it was technically a classroom. But it had been being used for storage. I mean, there were desks, filing cabinets, bookshelves, rolls of colored paper, garbage cans, you name it. This was just a catch-all storage room for all kinds of crap. Well, there was nobody going to help me to clean it out, and actually it was pretty disgusting that any new employee would be treated this way. But I started dragging stuff out of there, and it took me the afternoon just to do that. At this point, I'm getting angry, frustrated, and actually even a little nervous. I'm going to start teaching the following Monday, and I'm in no way prepared. Oh yeah, one thing, the principal had basically lied to me when he interviewed me. He said he was interviewing for a U.S. history position. That was it. That's all I would be teaching. I thought, that's cool, one subject. Because I knew, for one, I'm driving all the way from Tyler. This is, I thought, at best case, a 4-hour daily commute. Turned out to be a whole lot more than 4 hours. I had no idea how bad inner city Dallas traffic could be, but more on that a little bit later. Anyway, so I'm cleaning out my room. I also find out that in addition to teaching U.S. history, I'm also teaching world geography. I got my room all set up. Turns out even my desks, I didn't have anywhere near enough desks. I didn't have my classroom charts yet, but I knew I didn't have enough desks. And these desks were like elementary school desks, you know, those little tiny ones you had in kindergarten or first grade. This is a high school with big old high school kids, and all I've got is a handful of tiny little elementary school desks. This is just ridiculous. I'm already starting to realize, you know, you hear all these bad things about inner city schools and how the inner city schools fail our kids, especially our minority kids. And having taught in inner city enough, I can tell you there is a lot of truth to that. So anyway, the room's a mess, and I find out that I'm going to be teaching U.S. history and world geography. So I get it all set up, and I take a couple textbooks home, which, oh, that's another thing. I had hardly any textbooks. There was maybe 10, 12 textbooks of each subject, so I definitely didn't have enough textbooks for all of my students. But I took a couple textbooks home for the weekend, thought I'd start preparing some lessons, get an idea of what I was going to teach that year, how I wanted to lay it out, how I wanted to present it. So I went home and spent the weekend preparing lessons for my students, which the following Monday I would come to learn that I had wasted my time. On Monday, very first day of school, I'm informed that we're going to have a social studies department meeting immediately after school that day. And at that meeting, I learned that I would be hand-fed all of us, I would be hand-fed my TEKs or my objectives, or basically what I would be expected to teach for just 1 week at a time. And we would have a meeting once a week where the district would come over and give us our objectives or our TEKs for the following week. One problem with this, couple problems with this. One, this is just not the way I plan. I plan way out. Throughout my entire career, I would plan out for the entire year whenever I could, and then all I had to do was just show up and teach what I had already planned to teach. They were going to be hand feeding us 1 week's worth of objectives or lesson topics per week, and we'd have the weekend to prepare. It was ridiculous. With the students, found out that, and actually I'd already been warned, when you give your first test, don't be too disappointed. We don't have the best students in the world here at Pinkston, no doubt. Most of them just didn't care. I mean, I remember when I gave my first test, practically every one of my students failed it miserably. And I'd even told them exactly what to study. This is social studies, so I'm giving them notes, talking to them about the notes and teaching them and everything. I'm telling them put little stars next to these things. I'm basically telling them what's going to be on the test, and they couldn't be bothered to study. The kids in that school were very, very disrespectful. My class sizes were ridiculous. I had 7 periods. None of them were less than 30 students. I actually had a couple classes of more than 40 students. There were so few desks that most of my students were either standing or leaning against a wall or sitting on the floor or sitting on the air conditioner or up on counters. I mean, it was just disgusting, and not a good experience for my first time as a Texas public school teacher. So again, the kids were very disruptive. I learned real quick that the kids were basically in charge of that school. I remember a couple kids were so disrespectful, so disruptive that I did referrals, an office referral to send the kid to the office. The office would just send the kids right back to class. They basically did nothing. One thing was funny, on the very first day of school, it turns out that there's an alternative education program. This is basically where the bad kids go. The kids that really probably should be in juvenile hall or even prison. Kids that are so disruptive to schools and are so bad they get sent to an alternative education program. Weird thing in Dallas, at least back then in 2006, at the beginning of each school year, they just let the kids all start over. So even the worst kids in the district were just sent right back into the public school system and see how you do. Well, very first day of school, even one of my own students was so horrible. The cops came in and actually put him in handcuffs and took him away. First day of school, kids are being taken away in handcuffs. Crazy. Goodness, my commute ended up being a whole lot worse than I thought it was going to be. I thought it would just be maybe a 2-hour trip both ways, which I could kind of handle. Not ideal, but I could handle it. No, that inner city Dallas traffic is a nightmare, especially in the afternoon about the time I would be leaving. Plus, what made me even later was almost every day we had meetings after school. I thought, wow. So I wouldn't get out of the school till probably 4:30, 5 o'clock at night, and then have to face that 5 o'clock Dallas traffic. I wasn't getting home until 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. Just miserable. But I'm doing the best I can. I mean, this is my first job. I'm not typically a quitter. But after I hung in there for 4 weeks, and it was just miserable. And I was exhausted. I was tired. I was frustrated. It seemed like all I was doing 24/7 was either working, driving to work, or preparing to work. Snapping at my wife, I think, if I remember. I was just a miserable guy. I remember one Thursday morning, I was driving to work, and I just said, you know what? Life's too short. I'm a retired military veteran. I've got my pension. I don't absolutely have to work. I mean, to live to the standard of living that I like to live, I need to work, but I could survive on my military pension. I said, I'm miserable. I'm exhausted. I'm hating my job. I hate the kids. My administration sucks. So I'm hating my life. I said, you know what? I quit. So I drove into Dallas. I went to the school, told my principal, look, this is my last day. Said, at the end of the day, I'll pack up my stuff and leave. I told him, I said, I'm sorry, but I'm miserable. I'm hating this. So it was tough. It was tough. It was tough. But I felt the weight just lift off my shoulders anyway. Couple good things. I never did get a contract, but at least they paid me. That's good. So I got paid for the 5 weeks of work or 4 or 5 weeks of work I actually put in. So that was good. Also, I didn't mention this earlier, but Pinkston was a academically unacceptable school. The way Texas ranks schools now is by letter grades, A, B, C. But back then, in 2006, and for several years thereafter, schools were ranked based on, they're either exemplary, which means the absolute best, recognized, second best, acceptable, or it might have been called satisfactory, but either way, an acceptable school. And then the worst performing schools were academically unacceptable. Pinkston High School was an academically unacceptable school. And based on everything I observed while I was there, I could definitely see why. Of course, I quit. One good thing there is the school was so bad and had been academically unacceptable for so many years that the state actually came in and took the school over the next year. So I would have been out of a job anyway, because when the state comes in, they basically put all the core subject teachers out of work and they bring their own people in. So I would have been out of a job anyway. Well, so now I've found and quit my first social studies teaching job in Texas. In my next video, I'll explain what I did next. It was well into the school year by this point. So anyway, I'll tell you what I did next. I appreciate you watching my videos. Feel free to subscribe or leave a comment. Until next time, bye-bye.